Hello. Today's story is called The Great Escape. Moses and Aaron went to visit the king of Egypt. God wants you to set his people free, they announced. But the king just laughed. Don't be silly, he said. They do what I tell them. They work for nothing. I will never set them free. Then I must warn you, said Moses. God will make some terrible things happen until you change your mind. It started almost at once. The rivers of Egypt filled with blood. The houses of Egypt swarmed with frogs. The dust of Egypt turned into gnats. But the king would not let God's people go. The people in Egypt were covered with flies. The animals in Egypt grew sick and died. And ugly sores broke out on everyone. But still the king would not let God's people go. Hail pelted the land and broke down the crops. Locusts gobbled up what was left. Then darkness like night fell for 3 whole days, and still the king would not give in. Finally, God sent an angel to kill the king's eldest son and the eldest sons of all the Egyptians. Then at last the king said, "Go, go, and never come back." God's people cheered. God's people packed. God's people waved goodbye. But just as they reached the sea and were puzzling about how to get across, the king changed his mind. He leapt into his chariot and led his army out after them. Soon the sea stretched out before God's people, and the Egyptian army rushed behind like a wave. But what could they do? Raise your special walking stick, God said to Moses. Can you see? Here's his special stick raised into the sky. And do you know what happened? The sea split into 2 before them, leaving a path right down the middle. The people of Israel hurried along that path, with the Egyptian army close behind them. Just as the last of God's people reached the other side in safety, Moses lowered his stick and the waters rushed back in, and the army were washed away. God's people were free at last.